Okay, so we've got a fabulous topic tonight, our much loved kingfisher. And there are quite, it's a good time of year to find them, isn't it, as well? Because there's a lot around and by the riverbanks and things like that. So they're just so stunning. It's something, obviously, it's a very treasured, isn't it, bird. Um, so here we go. So, obviously they're more visible as well, aren't they, as we go into autumn and winter, and there's a lot of food and stuff around for them at the moment with around the harvest time. So I thought it'd be a nice topic to do. So I've got down for us to work tonight this week in watercolours, stroke watercolour pencils, but you're more than welcome to use colour pencils or any other media. The biggest difference between working in coloured pencils and watercolour pencils or watercolour is that we tend in each area to work light to dark. And when I say in each area, I'll explain a bit more about what I mean as we go through, so that we can reserve the areas of white. Obviously, if we're working in acrylics or any other something like oils, even we're building the layers up so we work kind of and put a mid-tone down, then work darks, brights, lights, and finish off with the highlights and things like that. So proportionally, I mean, we can use our page. I've actually chopped this down. It's slightly longer as the actual original one, but I didn't want quite so much space at the end. So I'm kind of just going to make mine a bit more central. So if it doesn't fit perfectly as it does on here, don't worry. I'm just going to take the Kingfisher and just move it along slightly. But what you can do, if it helps, with looking at it with proportion, you can look at where about halfway is, like, which is there, to get your image in, and that can be quite helpful. So I'm just going to leave that ruler there just for a moment. So I do want to make sure with the Kingfisher, so I'm looking at halfway mark here, whereabouts it will go. And I just want to make sure I get the shape of the head, which can be much flatter than not a lot of birds here. And I'm just going to look at, obviously we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, I've cut 4 rulers across. We know that the beak comes almost to a quarter, ends at almost a quarter in here. So that's halfway. Yeah, so about there. Further because I've got the end chopped off as well. I've got to remember that. If you're working obviously a bit longer, you'll have to adapt these slightly. I've just chopped that bit of paper down. So I just want to kind of pop in just some key little bits with my pencil. Now, if you're using acrylic, watercolor pencils or anything watercolory, you want to make sure it's quite light. Obviously, I have to make mine much darker so you can see, but overall, you don't really want this coming through. And also, it can kind of get a little bit muddy, or it can show through the light patches, which we don't really want. So I'm just kind of popping in, making sure I actually get most of the bird in. So I'm looking at, again, we can look at this halfway across if you want to. That's quite helpful. So I'll just pop a little grid on here. But as I said, there's a big chunk missing off the side here, so you'll have to just bear that in mind if you're moving it over. So, I'm just making sure I've got the beak and everything in the right place. When I'm moving in, I'm looking at this halfway to make sure the chest is underneath. Look, it's lined up nicely, isn't it, with the top of the head there? It just kind of curves round. So that's what I'm looking at doing there. Make sure that chest curves round there until I do the next part. And then I'm just going to finish off this head. This is really me making sure I can get the tail feathers in, because sometimes what happens with birds, and is we start with one area and we do all of it, and then we go, oh no, can't fit the bottom of it in. It's easy to do. So what I'm going to do here, I'm looking at the angle of the back of the Kingfisher, the angle it is. It kind of follows this line down, and again I'm looking in this top quarter, which would be here, it's just kind of coming all the way down with a slight curve. And then where this line is in the middle here, across the page, it just kind of comes down a little bit more, curves in a bit. And then we've got a bit of a tail here. And you can adjust these. If you do it lightly enough, it's fine. Then we've got underneath the feathers there. And then the stick coming out. Now, if you want to go really loose with this, then that's absolutely fine as well. So I want the feet coming underneath, hooking underneath like that. And we can't really see, they just look like hoops, don't they, actually, on this particular picture. So I'm just, as I said, making sure I get it all in. So I've got the tail feather coming out the back here, and then we've got this tail feather coming down just a little bit underneath the bird there, underneath the kingfisher. And then I can just double check the top works and get this kingfisher coming, with feathers coming around there. And then again, you know, if you want to just check the angle of the beak, you can do that. Just literally just do this, check it here. And what you do need to be aware of is the size of the kingfisher's beak, because actually it is proportionally on this one, you know, if you go from the edge, certainly here, same size as the head. It's really long. Quite often we underestimate or overestimate some of these things. So it's just nice to have a go at getting these in. And then of course we've got the kingfisher's head. That's kind of quite long, and then it does go flatten off a little bit. And then we get this underside look of this very light feathers here. Okay, so there's quite a lot going on there. And then we can, you know, again, you might want to just smooth off your feathers a little bit. Now, depending on how loose you want to go with this, some people might want to go much looser. That's fine. You don't really need to put too many markings in. I would tend to pop the eye in, to be fair, just because it's always easy just to do it. It's just a shape. Everything's a series of shapes. And I'm just popping up this little bit here underneath the chin, so that we've got an idea of the different shapes that are going on, and bringing it down here, making sure I don't leave the white feathers there. Yeah. And then we've got the eye here. So quite often, you know, you get this little bit of a pattern here from the side, where you get a bit of a pattern, a bit of a like a line where the edge of the beak is, where this blue part is. That's really helpful to see where the eye goes. We can kind of just get in some of those details there, where that comes. And then we have a patch here of orange. It's very feathered, isn't it? And that one kind of leads into the white here. So yes, that's great. And then, you know, if that's helpful to pop that in, then you can see where the eye is going to go up here. And even in the eye look here, we've got this kind of straight bit here, which is just above. And then we can just kind of get the shape of the eye, which seems to come like that, doesn't it? Like that. And then just here, we've got a bit of white feathers and a bit of orange. Just like that. So we've got quite a lot going on, and obviously we can do lots more to that eye when we want to. So it's quite nice, isn't it? We haven't done much detail. We've been quite loose, so it's a little bit nice to go back in, and you'll really lose yourself in this. There's so much to be said about the relaxation side of our artwork. You know, don't underestimate just how much we relax when we're doing our art. It's not really isn't just about the end. If you're focusing all the time on the end result, you don't get that benefit of that. It's just a wonderful wonderful, relaxing thing to do for ourselves, really. Having this conversation a lot with people recently and saying it is, you know, and if you've got the right environment that encourages, and that's all the better, really. Okay, so I'm looking at this now. I think I need to bring this down a little bit. These tail feathers, and actually I think my tail needs to be a bit longer now. I'm looking, it kind of curves round just to make sure I've got everything in. So I'm just adjusting mine slightly, which we can do. It's fine. Really lovely. The colours in here are just so stunning. So the only other thing I might pop in, because I am going into detail, I'm not going really loose with this one. I'm just going to kind of pop in whereabouts these feathers here go. So following them round. I'm just following a few of these shapes here just to pop them in. But as I said, you don't need to put you don't need to put all this in at all. I'm just doing it because I want to see about whereabouts like these shadows are and eventually where these light areas are as well. So I'm just kind of popping in a few of the tail feathers so I can see, you know, where the change is with that. And then of course, you know, there's plenty to put in with these twigs. If you want to pop those in as well, you can pop those in. And comes behind. I'm really not focusing too much on the background because I want the bird to come in, which is why it's kind of nice and blurred out over the background. So I've got some things going on there. So that's kind of just getting it nice and mapped out so we feel a little bit more comfortable, confident, whichever, you know, whichever way we say it, to be able to do that. I'm just going to just a little bit just rounded in the body. I'm just going to just change that slightly. So just excuse me reaching for a rubber. Just a bit, I felt I've gone a little bit too, there we are. I don't want to over rub either, so there we go. Excuse me. Right, so yeah, there we go. Let's have a little look, shall we, as to what we've got to have a look at now. So in terms of, obviously I've got some watercolour pencils here and I've got some watercolour. Sometimes people like to mix and match that up, and other times people just like to use the pencils. And so what you can do, if you're using watercolour pencils, then you can start to kind of get some of those colours in and start to work around. Now you can do all of that if you want, and then you can put everything on first and then work into it. So for example, let me have a look if I've got this colour here. I'm going to look at each section. So I'm going to take the top section, for example, around the eye, this section, this section. So if you're working all in pencil to do that, then watercolor pencil, so I'll come to colour pencil. And I want to get my lightest in, which are these brights here. And I can't say enough about testing whilst we're doing this. So I'm just going to use this bit of tester paper here, just to make sure, is this the colour? Once I've actually got it on, is that the colour I actually want to come through? Yes. So what I can do then, you know, is start to kind of wiggle my pencil a little bit. So I've got to be sure that that's going to work. And it will be, you know, that will work out up there. So another thing is like making sure you can get into the paper, get enough pigment on there, because nice and thinly and nice and getting more, more pressure and more pigment on will give you very different results. So this one is going to be obviously more intense than if you've got something that's more thinly on. Just bear with me a moment. Right, sorry about that. I was just checking I'd actually got my right pencils because they're not kind of going on as smoothly as my other ones, but they are. Yes, they are. It's fine. It is that. Just need to get them kind of moving a little bit. So yes, you can get all of these in with your pencil first. You've just got to be quite careful not to get not to go in and like rub it all together if you've got darker areas in there. So I'm just popping this in like this, just these really lovely in. If you're using coloured pencils, obviously you won't be using any water with a coloured pencil, with a wax pencil. So it's just thinking about making sure that your pencils are nice and sharp. You can use these circular motions to make sure, with the wax pencil anyway, to make sure you're getting into the paper and just building it up really gently. Because if you go in with a wax pencil really hard like that, and then you get this kind of smooth finish on the top, you won't be able to put any more colours and layer them up. Whereas if you're starting and you pop in a few colours and then you want to put another colour on top of it, etc., you've got to make sure it's not got that waxy bloom on top of it. But again, we're working light to dark really. And then it's finding, the other colours to pop in here now. So again, I've taken the lightest and then need to pop in, like there's some here. It's quite delicate, isn't it, when you start to actually look. I'm looking at the top here where we get this lovely almost stripe, isn't it? Like that. We just really, we're just kind of copying what we can see. I am going to get this iron. So again, when we're saying working light to dark, I'm just going to leave that around this here, this square area, which is actually like the reflection in the eye. So I want to make sure I leave that in the middle. You can't see it at the moment. We will do as we build up the colour around it. Now you can do the same with the watercolour. That's absolutely fine. I'm just kind of getting a general idea of where this is and make sure I've left this shape in the middle, because we can't take that out. That's the thing, we've got to make sure we reserve that. And then any other of these, any more of this here. So I'm going to go back over to here now and get in some of these other colours that we can see here. And if you haven't got the right ones, this is the thing you can do with watercolour pencils, is to layer two colours on one on top of the other. And again, you'll need to test that in advance. So if you do that, just make sure it actually is the colour that you want. Actually, I quite like that. That is a nice colour. I'm going to go for that. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to layer up these two colours here. Between, and what I'm doing is I'm just leaving a little gap between there and the other colours that I've done, just so that if there's an overlap, I can kind of move it carefully with my own. with my brush. So we've got a little gap between, so it's not just going to spread straight into it. Yeah. So I'll just show you how I would like wet that now. So obviously as we're going through, we can pop these in. This is going back to the watercolours. So I'm just going to pop in these light colours here first. Make them a bit. Use the brights, some on here as well, some like those. Now you can either leave that area dry, or you can just carefully work around it so that it doesn't run too much. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to switch, put a very small amount of water on my brush and start to work that in. Around. There we go. And whilst it's wet, if you notice, if you think, actually, I wanted to leave, I've not, you know, because we're working quite small scale here. If you think, I want to just, I wanted a few lighter bits in there, I've gone over it. While it's still wet, if you do it very quickly, you can just, you see there, I've rolled up tiny bit of tissue, just pull it out as you're working. The warmer your room, the quicker you'll have to do that though, because if it dries, it won't, you know, it's harder to get out. So there we are. And then, you know, if you wanted to, then you can kind of work it in a little bit. There we go. So I am now going to pop in some of these stripes. Again, I'm just taking care not to let it bleed. Although some people might want their colours to bleed in, that's absolutely fine as well. Just gives a different effect. It's much looser. I just want to keep my colours nice and fresh. So I can work all the way through doing this with you know, with the different colour pencils, or I can actually work in two. So I can just work in some areas that are a bit more detailed, you know, where I get these kind of more linear shapes here, where I want a bit more control, and I can pop those in. Like there's a little bit of just here. There's a little bit of a darker area. So gives me a bit more kind of control. But you can do that with a fine brush as well afterwards, after you've finished. So, you know, after you've done the other colours, I'm just kind of working like multi layers with the pencil at the minute. So in terms of popping in some watercolours, again, what we need to be looking at are each section that you're going on to next. So if you're doing, I'm continuing with the blues just because I've been using those. So you can continue with your pencils, or you can, ideally, you can do exactly the same as we've just been saying, but with watercolour, you can mix up. I'll have to retest. So I know mine's a bit of a mishmash just for demonstration purposes, really. Just in case people want to use one or the other or both. So I'm going to just do the next bit just with watercolours. So again, I'm looking at this section here. I'm looking at the very light areas, and then those that are a bit that's slightly darker around it. So look, you may have to, if you haven't got a colour that's similar, you can add colours to them, and you know, so you could make a colour more of a bluey green, or if it's a brighter green, you can add maybe a bit of like a yellow, a bit more of a yellow to it, and just try some different colours in there until you're happy. So like this colour here is not dissimilar to that. It's quite bright on there, so I think I'm going to go for this. But I can see that there's some very light marks in there. So because we're working so small, I'm actually going to pop it in. I'm not going into that black area for the moment though, because that's a different colour altogether. And I'm going to do exactly what I was saying before. So you can either use a tiny bit of rolled up tissue, or You can use a brush that's you've already got that's dry, and just lift it out. Just lift some of the colour out like that. I prefer tissue because I find it absorbs it. There we go. So it's just kind of lifting out some slightly lighter colours. And then I want to pop some kind of more bright ones back in again as well. So I want to pop the bright ones in around, make it a bit more of a flecked effect there. And then again, I can then go look at some of the darker. Are there any of the dark ones in there? I'm sorry about that. So I've got my volume up a bit high, haven't I? Right, so just pop this in here, look. I'm just adding some of these slightly darker colours around the edge of here. So you've got this lovely kind of mottled effect. And then you can do, where you've done your pencil, as long as you're careful, you can add, some colours in there as well. So it's really nice to how you can interchange these media. Okay, so we're just really getting sucked into the beautiful feathers. The reason I always say, it's nice to try, I'm going to do the dark ones now. Just carefully wetting those. There we go. The reason I sometimes say work on sections at a time is that what you get, certainly with birds, I really enjoy painting birds for that reason, is you get this directional, where the feathers go, the directional movement. So it's nice to follow through, whereas this one's kind of going up here. This section here is kind of going down a bit, and you can actually kind of get that in there. You can draw it in. And that's the other thing you can do with the pencils is to kind of have that there. Draw those like kind of directional places in. And we're just kind of just getting all of those combination in. So I'm not gonna wet the eye now. I think this is probably drying enough up here. But I'm trying to be really mindful. You can always like I've just done that, wiped it off on a bit of tissue so that it doesn't kind of spread, because I don't want the eye to spread. I want to actually have that really obvious marking the eye where you get that reflection. There we go. So again, we're starting to really look at that there. Pop into those, and so I've got some of the eye in there. If I want to deepen it, again, I can use just my normal. I do actually tend to use black for eyes. Sometimes they have like a reflection in them that's a different colour, and that's, by all means pop that in. We just kind of replicating the shapes and everything that we can actually see there. So we're just working through it bit by bit, really. I've switched a bit over now to watercolours, just to demonstrate the other one. So obviously in here, we've got some other colours, haven't we? When we look at the whites, this is what I was saying. White isn't always white, so it is. If you look underneath here, you get this shadow underneath the beak on the fur there. So it's making sure if we can see another colour, we'll try and mix that up. And it's got a slight orangey tinge, I think. For me, I can see it. So I'm going to put a little bit of kind of a sienna and ochre in there together and see what colour that is. Maybe it's a bit more. Maybe it's a bit more yellow. It might even have a little bit of a tiny bit of purple there. So let's just keep going with what you think you can see. Yeah, I'm happy with that. We'll go with that one. And so in here, I'm looking at this bit here and where it goes, trying to get this shape in here. So again, we're looking, we're observing, and we've got there is a very obviously light bit through the middle, but then again, it's just a bit slightly darker through there. So all we're doing is that close observation of what we can see, which is a joy, isn't it, to look, to be able to see like that. Very lucky. And again, here, what I can see is some of the colours coming in. I can't understand, there's almost a bit of an orangey colour there, isn't there, as well? So I've got to decide what's the right orange tone to pop in there. I'm going to go with a bit of this, and then a bit of this. And then I'm going to pop in. And again, you can use just a normal watercolour, or you can use your watercolour pencil. Just going to pop this in. And then I can just pop that in there. Now, when you start to look, it is quite interesting how many colours there are. So I've got this orange area here. I'm going to go in with this orange colour I've tested here. And if I want to, the thing is with it, you can always start with a base colour. As long as it's not lighter, if you can darken anything off, but you need to make sure you've got your light colours in there first, if there's anything that is lighter. Now this is where it can be a little bit, you've got to be a bit careful, because this is where if you get blue and orange, or like a blue and yellowy colour, you can end up with green. So we've just got to be a little bit careful about what we're selecting here. But if you're going brighter anyway, you can tend to, we'll be able to cover that up a little bit, but I am going to wait until it's dry, because what I don't want is I don't want it to get too kind of muddy. There we go. You do get these wonderful patterns, really wonderful patterns in the birds. And then there's a little bit at the front here, again, and down there. There's so much going on, isn't there, just on one little bird when you think about it. So this has got some overlap. I might even brighten that up even more. Or, if you can see yellow in it, for example, pop a bit of yellow in it. So look at this. And there. Yeah. Yeah, so then when we're looking at the beak, there's some amazing colours in that. So have a little look at what you can see and what colour you want to use. But there's almost a bit of orange, a bit of brown in there, a little bit of purple, but whatever you can see, because we know this, don't we? We all see things so differently. So just test. The thing is, obviously, we're working in these patches at the moment. We're not needing an awful lot of. It might even be a bit of a blue. It's too warm, I think. I'm gonna go for a bit of drop a bit of blue in there and see what happens. If we're doing this on a big scale, we'll obviously need to make sure we're making our colours. That's a bit better. Making our colours, mixing up more of them. But at the moment, we're okay because. yeah, so then we can obviously darken any areas. So if there's anything in there and you think, ah, that needed to be light and I needed to leave that, then just dry off your brush a bit. Just get a plain, sorry, just dry off your brush and then just see if you can create that light, you know, just drag a line through it, drag the paint off it while it's still wet. But again, it's making sure you do that early enough. So you're just making it a bit lighter in one, you know, the spot that you want it to be. Okay, without it getting too, you know, getting too into it. So then, you know, you can put some of these darker colours, etc. So I'm going to go in with this orangey colour underneath. I may even pop, because it's underneath, just a tad of this purple. So I'm using the orange that I've mixed. I'm going to drop a tad purple because it's blue based. It will make it feel like it's a bit more in the shadow. It's not as warm. So although we've got this pop of colour, just got, it's less intense. And that's before I put any other colours and then on there. So then I'd be thinking about, you know, where are the darks and then where are the very dark and what colour is that dark? So is that dark black? Is it as dark as the eye, or is it really, really kind of dark navy or something like that? You know, how can you replicate that? It's not, this is very intense. It's more colour for the body, I would think. So, you know, you just got to decide what it is you want to do. So if you haven't, say, got a dark as like a navy, you can go with the blue that you've got. If you think it's not black, but it's much darker, then try adding something like a bit of dark purple, like violet, not warm purple, but darker purple to that. Just test it. If we've got another purple, I'll try it on there, see what it looks like. Yes, that's okay. But then you can always add a touch of brown as well, dark brown, like a raw lumber or something. So that's all I've done is added raw lumber. And I've got that colour, which I'm happy with that one now. So I put dark blue, a blue in there, a raw umber, a dark brown, and a little bit of like violet purple as well. So then you can start to look, you know, where else can I see these colours? You know, do I want to, you know, what we don't want is like a big, really heavy outline. We just want to get the shadows in. There is some darks up there. So you'll see, you know, you can start to see where they are, can't you, from here? And if you need to wait until something's dried to pop the next layer on, then by all means just do that. That's fine. There we go. I'm just going to leave that beak for the moment. It's a little bit, feels like it's a bit floating now under here. So I'm just going to tie it in with a bit of that purple in there. There we go. Right. So I'm just going to take a pause there, see how you're all getting on. See if you're really getting really relaxed now, really pulled into that. Okay, so I mean, we can pretty much go through the whole of the bird in this way, you know, whether you're using just the watercolor pencils, just pencils, we're just layering up, you know, nice and gently, light to dark, or whether you're using watercolors on their own, you know, it's absolutely, you know, whichever you're doing, it's fine. So even if you're layering up, say, wax pencils as well, that's something else that you can do, is to, you know, pop like I was doing there, you know, just pop two over the top and see if you get the colour that you want with the wax pencils as well. You don't really know until you do it on the test, or unless you know your colour. You know, if you if you know your colours inside out on your set because you use them so much, then you won't need to check. But more often than not, we don't really know, we're not really sure. So I'm just going to pull my palette down a little bit, so I'm going to go in and start to kind of get some more shades in there as well. So I'm going to start to mix up. I'm going to get a slightly bigger brush because this area here, there's a few different tones in, but I feel that I can mix, you know, I can actually get those on with a bit of a bigger brush. It's not as kind of finicky as detailed as those. So what I want to do is get some light colours that I'm going to get in first. The lighter ones, there's a bit down here that's almost white actually on that tail down there. And then some more yellowy ones. So I'd say that's more beigey, yellowy, and then some bright yellow. And then we've got the orange in there. It's quite almost verging on orangey red there. So we want all of those ready, I would say. I'm going to pop them here. So this is my testing my orange. I've got a combination of an orange. If you haven't got orange, then just get you know, you can do some red and yellows together, different combinations. I'm going to add some yellow to that because it's still a little bit too bright, but I do need some. Let's see. Drop a bit more red in there. Yeah, quite luminous there. Okay. Yeah. I'm happy with that. This kind of top bit and a few colours weave through the lights. So I want some nice bright yellow in there now. Make sure that your water is nice and clean, because if you've been using those blues and you end up with a grey water, greyish blue water, then it's going to muddy those lovely vibrant yellows, because it's the opposite. Blues are the opposite end of the scale, aren't they? Spectrum. So if you want to keep those colours nice and clear, this yellow, I'm after a bright colour. Yeah, that's perfect. So I want this bright one down this side. Get some more of that. Just making sure I've not got any blue water on there. I've got that colour ready now as well. And what other colours do we got? There's a bit of a lighter yellow over here. So I think there's less, what should I say, less kind of pigment in it. So I'm going to go for a mid colour. Try this one. This one's actually a little bit warmer, but I'm going to thin it out a bit so it's not quite as Still need it a bit lighter over here, so I'm going to try a different tone yellow. Nice to be able to use the colours that we've got as well. That's very kind of acidic yellow, so I'm going to go back to this warmth here. Just pop a bit of that in as well and see if I can get that. Okay, I'm happy with that. Just pop a bit more, tiny bit more water in it. So I've got two yellows there and a reddy colour, and then there's this other colour underneath here, but I might just address that when I come to it. So we get these yellows in first, and the lights here. It's very light, isn't it there? So this one down here, not as bright white as that or anything, but I might go in with actually using my white from the box, my white watercolour, which doesn't cover, so we can't cover it over, but we can use it, you know, with another colour slightly darker than white, just to kind of give us the flavour of that. Right, so let's get some of these yellows in. So I'm going to do these down this side here. Now, bear in mind what will happen a little bit here is it will be a little bit glistening on the screen because it's quite wet. And wherever I can see those gorgeous patches of feathers, and I pop them in. Really, it looks so soft and downy, doesn't it? It's beautiful. And then as I'm getting there's a few on this tail feathers here around here. So they're a little bit warm underneath. So, then. And then there's these ones here. So I'm watching the direction of these feathers because they're going outwards like this, aren't they? You know, pulling them in, getting those in. And you can see, because obviously what I was saying before about not, you know, putting your pencil marks too dark underneath it, that's what's happened. It doesn't matter because I'm demonstrating it anyway, but on your own work, you don't really want that coming through. So again, I've got these would be, use the tip just to pull those out. And as I said, we can always go over those. Any more? Let's look, there's just some tiny downy bits here. Once you start to really look, you start to see a few more. Right, so start to drop in. Now I'm not too worried if this does, oops, Daisy, if this does start to spread a little bit. In fact, I'm going to move it around a tad whilst it is still damp, because it's similar tone. It's not going to muddy up in there. You could do that with pencil as well, where you've got similar tones, as long as it doesn't kind of go and cover all of that yellow. But I'm just carefully moving it. It kind of gives, when it does blend, like it starts to bleed a little bit like that. And it's a very soft area. It's quite nice. But some people hate it and other people really like it. So I think you just got to have a go and see, you know, do I like this or don't I? So again here, put some quite downy bits there. And I'm able as well, if I put a bit more water on to make it, you know, not too intense colour, I can build that colour up if I want it darker. I can build it up. Yeah. So getting some of this shape coming around here. And some down here, which is just lovely. Okay, so I'm just building that up, and I want it brighter, obviously much brighter at the top, so I'm going to add more pigment to this area up here. give it another test again. Yeah, I'm going to pop in. Yeah. Again, you know, I'm obviously working this bit a little bit more slightly loose than I have done. So I'm just going to drop in a couple of colours where I feel I need a little bit more depth in there. And I may even just put a bit more depth into, you know, the yellows that I've got in there now as well. So I'm a bit more comfortable. It's the right tone. So I'm just dropping in some slightly warmer yellows in there, like I did over this. These are bright over this side, but these are a bit warm. It's working well with it. There we go. So obviously this at the moment we've not got much shape to where the wings are. I haven't got any dark areas in yet, so I need to pop those in, but I'm just going to give it a minute to dry before I go in and put those darks in there, because there's a few down here, some here. I may do this bit while it's damp. So again, I think similar to down here, just pop a little tad bit of purpley ready in there. You could try a bit of try a bit of a mixture of colours in there. So let's try that one. Okay, yeah, put that one in. So I'm happy with just dropping that in a little bit. In here. Almost a bit pinky. Yeah. And then there's a darker area there as well. I'm going to put that underneath where the legs are. Above the branch where it's leaning. And the kingfisher's leaning in. Okay. There's a tiny bit of just a bit of a shadowy over this side. That in. Okay. So obviously the feet and everything, we've not done that bit. I'm just gonna wait until I've got the main of the, you know, the blue in of the kingfisher. So we've got all these lovely blues again over here. So I'm gonna let that dry a little bit. And then I'm going to work some of these colours and things in. So obviously this is my lightest, so I'm going to be really careful. It's not white, it's not the same as that. If in doubt, check. Down here looks bright, But here is really, really light blue, isn't it? Really light blue, and the different tones. This is kind of a light colour in between, catching a light in between the feathers. And it's a bit darker, seems to be a bit darker, so I'm just going to mix up some colours for that. What happens there? These blues, that's a bit warm. Might not be right, actually, let's see. Maybe a bit darker. Nice one dropped. Tiny bit of brown in there. See what happens. Yeah, for here. But I'm also getting a bit of a purple tinge there as well. And all we can do is go on our gut feeling about what we think we can see on there. Yeah, that's much darker there. So those are the dark ones. So I'll leave that for when I do that bit there. Darken it up with that. And then I'm just going to have a little look where it's trying to get that in between like that. But then I've got some brights in here and some very light blues. So I'm going to see if I can mix up these very light blues. There. One of them is almost a bit turquoisey. So you can make it really thin, the turquoise one. Bluey turquoise, or you can try and see what happens if you mix a little bit of white in there. See if that makes it lighter. Sometimes it makes it very pastelized. It doesn't always give you a vibrant colour. But you can try. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to pop that in here. It's really light down this back here. And anywhere else I can see. And we've got some lighter patches here. And then I want to get some of these lovely turquoise bits in again. I'm going to go in. I can go in with my brush, or I can go in with the pencil. And to go in, see what colours I've got. See if I've got anything that's got a nice kind of blue. Yeah, that's nice. So I'm just going to make sure I've got plenty of pigment on my brush actually. And not too much water so it'll dry a bit. Okay, I'm going to also change my brush as well so it's a bit smaller. So I'm looking in here. And I can see these really light bits under there. Anywhere else I can see these feathers that are very bright. Start to put those in. And then I'm looking at where else these brights are. So here, very vibrant. And then again here. So I'm going to just bring that through those So the tail feather, you know, these little feathers are overlapping. I'll make sure that you see that through. So they're poking out, look like that. And then leave gaps between them. So we've got the, you know, so we've got that dark and light bit going on here. Yeah. It looks a bit square at the minute, but we'll kind of soften that off when we get some of these shadows and things between it as well. But again, you know, we've got a light bit round there. So what I might like to do is just take some of that round. We're getting this really light coloured area here. Just smoothing that off with the brush from the back. So anywhere else I can see this really lovely, very light colour, bright. When you start to look, you think, oh yeah, it's quite a few places actually. It's the bottom of this wing. You know, sometimes it's where the light hits, so it's catching, you know, the edge of this wing. It's darker on the top, but all around here, catching these feathers at the bottom, but the top is a bit darker. Like that. And then, you know, thinking about kind of darkening up around these areas as well. What colour here? So I'd reserve this particular colour up here. Um, and then a kind of a bit of a flecky bit through, but then it's in between the light, so we need to make sure we leave that as well, get those light bits reflected. Still kind of get the shadow in. Yeah. You know, and then, you know, do you want to, is there anything else you want to pop in? So I want to pop some darker colour around these light ones here. So I'm just going to go for another blue. Slightly darker than the one I've got here. Test that. And it's in really in here. And then some darker ones again. So this is where, you know, we start to go in and get some depth because we haven't put any shadows on here. It's just all colour at the moment. So we want to kind of look at some, you know, what dark colour you want to use there. So let's try this. This is a blue black, sometimes or Payne's grey. So I haven't gone in with total black. I'm going to use that on the eye, but this is a combination. So let's just see if this is dark enough. Yeah. And then here I've got this kind of a triangle shape. So it's looking at observing the little shapes that go in the feathers there as well. And then underneath, look. So underneath here. There's so much beauty to observe in these birds. They're just absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, and I'm just getting in some of these slightly deeper areas here. And then I'm going to lift this colour a bit because it's gone a little bit too grey there for my legs. I'm going to pop some colour just back in, just to make it a little bit more bluey. Bring it right down. Just drop some in. Keep working away, just observing what you can see. A little bit of purple in there. And again, you know, if there's anything you've got in there and you think, I just want to lift a little bit of this out, make it a bit more flecked, for example, then you just lift it out with that bit of tissue whilst it's wet, but just don't leave it too late, as in it'll dry. There we go. Now I'm just going to pop in, won't do it anymore, I'm just going to pop in a bit of this darker shadow in this beak here. Okay. And then I'm just going to pop some, you know, pop these little feathers in here as well, which have got a browny tinge. A bit of a reddy brown in there, I don't know if you see the same. So I'm just testing it, a bit of reddy brown. Maybe just with a tinge of bluey. And then, you know, just thinking about this, getting in these beautiful feet on here as well. So I'm going to pop in. They actually look, don't they, just curled here. It's just kind of going for a reddy orange there, just because that's the colour I can see under this light. Like that. swirled round. This one's slightly, I would say, slightly darker. This one's got a bit of vivid orange in there, so I'm going to go in with that. And then we can darken the area around the feet as well. Feet actually often, I was saying this today in class, that often the you can't always, you can just see a suggestion of the foot more often than not. You can't always see really what's going on with it, but we know it's the feet. And that's going to take quite a bit long time to dry because I've actually put it on very wet. And again, that's the key to drying time really, is how much water we've got on there as well. Okay, so we're not far off now here. Again, it's going, you know, it's getting these really dark areas. So inside here is so dark, but again, I might have to just wait a minute until this is dry to be able to get that, you know, show the shadows and start to actually do a bit of the twig first of all. But the twig is the same principle. We've just got some different, you know, start with the lights and then it just kind of goes up. Now, if you want to get the background in, if you want to do a background, you want to get the background in first, you can. That's fine. I'm going to focus on the twig. I will show you a bit of background after. But I am just going to make sure I spend the time doing this bit first, demo this bit first. But yeah, you could pop some background in around. I would wait until the bird is fully dry to do that, really, to be honest. So it doesn't, you know, blend in. So if you've got anything that's a little bit wet, then I just hang on. Just notice though, behind this bird's head, a bit more blue, so I'm going to pop that in. I'm going to concentrate on just doing this twig. So I want a few different browns and things on there. So I want a lighter one. So I'm going to pop that in there. So I'm going to go for yellow ochre, which is this kind of a colour here. But I'm going to thin that yellow ochre right down, and I'm going to add white from, you know, a white watercolour to that, so that it's not, so it's more of a creamy colour than a very warm ochre. So we'll end up with this here, look there. So that's the light colour I'm going to add. So I'm just looking at where it hits, you know, where, usually down one end where the light source is, it comes round onto the stick, so you can get that on there. And if it looks really like there's a few shapes with it on, that's absolutely fine. You do get these angled shapes on twigs. Yeah, you get like these patches. Sometimes it goes around the stick like this. You can pull the shape round. You know, we're looking at the side that's well lit, aren't we here? Again, it's kind of coming around the top of it. And then you're going in with the brown now as well. So I almost want like a middly brown, not the darkest one. So this is a, yeah, maybe a cross between that one and the ochre. So I'm just going to add a touch of ochre in there. Let's see, yeah, that one. So I'm going to go in now. This isn't the darkest, but what I'll probably do, unless I've got any whites in there, which I can't see, I'll probably pop this in around it, because I can always put a darker one over the top. So what I'm trying to do here is replicate the shadows and things that are on this stick, on this branch. Okay. So kind of getting those darker colours in there, but not the darkest. Still got to build this up a little bit. And then I'll go in with a really dark one. So only in the spots where it's very dark. So I'll probably go straight in with a try to see the difference on these. It's even darker than that. Go to the next one. That's better. So these are really only on certain spots. You don't get the, it's not dark the whole way. You just have a little look on your stick and see, really observe, where is that really dark one? I'm now going in this really dark area in underneath there as well. It helps create the shape of where the feet go as well. This is very dark. This is very dark under there. One side there. This is how, we're just creating this lovely Okay. So again, you can keep looking. Is there anything else you need to darken off a little bit more? Any other, colours you want to pop in there to make this a bit darker under here? And again, I'm going in slightly darker again, right in the centre of this, where where the kingfisher's falling on there, so it creates that feeling of, a little bit of depth where the stuff that as well a little bit. Again, so I think, yes, was anything else I was going to do here? Might just pop a few of these feathers here, look. You get a few dark ones in amongst these light ones to kind of create the texture of the feathers going over. So I'm just going to pop those in now it's dry, because I certainly don't want to let that bleed into my lovely, like light coloured yellow ones. It just creates it, makes it feathery, and makes it more natural, really. Okay. Maybe pop a little bit more depth on here. So what you're doing now is like looking around and thinking, what is um, what is the balance like on my painting? Is there anywhere else I need to make, a little bit more? Do I need definition? Do I need more shadow somewhere else? Do I need a bit more colour? And then you can just kind of do that. As long as it's darkening it, obviously it's a bit harder to lighten areas once you've gone into those. But yeah, there's lots you can still do with it. I think I might also, you tend to get a white section between here, but then you get an area of shadow over the top of it. So I'm just going to do that. Just very thin, and you can break this up as well so it doesn't feel too linear. There we go. Really, so that's, I'd be, quite happy with, this little study. My beak maybe needs to be slightly narrower, but that's just a point to think about, really. I would just make that top bit slightly over there, just this bit ever so slightly, but it's okay. It's fine. It's good for a first go. So if anyone's thinking about background, we'll have a think about that. But I'll just have a pause there so you can think about, whereabouts you are with that. Okay, so the background are really interesting, and I think what you've just got to have a think about. I could have put this background in before, but actually, personally, I don't always know what I want my background to look like um, before I start, or whether I even want one. And actually, if this was if I was doing this myself, I would probably not really put much of one in. Just because I quite like to have a little bit of white space sometimes. However, I am going to put one in because I just think it'll be helpful to demo. So what I'm going to do, obviously, this is it's quite what I would say diffused, isn't it? Because it's out of focus with the camera. So to get that, we need all of our colours ready, really, especially because it's quite warm for this time of year. So I'm just going to get in some kind of green colours in here. What I don't want it to do at all is overpower. So it's a line light green, isn't it? I don't want it to overpower anything in the foreground. So I'm going to add plenty of yellow. I've just cleaned off my palette as well, just briefly. I'm going to add more yellow in there, make it really kind of yellowy. Like this is quite fresh, isn't it? It's quite bright. So I want plenty of that. So that when I apply it, I'm going to make it I'm going to put more water in it as well, because I want it to be less, let's try that. I'm going to try it over the top. Yeah, so that's not too thick there. And obviously there's a darker area, slightly darker area here, so you just decide, and a kind of a more of a pinky area there. So I'll try and go. Now, the type of pink you get, you might not be able to get if you've just got one type of red. So don't beat yourself up if you think, because like if you've got something like an alizarin crimson, which is a little bit more on the bluey spectrum for a red. You might not be able to get that. So I've actually just mixed a bit of red with a bit of white, but you can use rose. You know, you get some quite nice rose colour. And again, I want that quite thin down. I don't want it to be too. So here, yeah, that's okay. So there's those two colours. I'm not really sure I want that in yet, so I'm not going to mix it. But I'm just going to go in with a nice big brush with this green. So where I want the green. And this is where kind of working nice and thickly really helps. Sorry, quickly, not thickly. So I've got a nice big flat brush, but you can use like a mop as well for watercolor, which is like the big round brush, and that kind of gets it evenly over, so you don't end up with those kind of lines where it joins. Just kind of move it around the page. I'm just kind of getting this in where I can see it here as well, in the corner. Over this way. And I'm just kind of going around carefully, really. This is dry. That's what I was saying, which looks dry. Just got a little bit of something on my brush there that's got in the paint. Just brush that side. So I'm just going to soften these edges down here so they're not kind of really edgy. You can do that while it's still damp. Again, I'm just going to have a bit going up behind here. Okay, so I'm dropping this in and I'm just going to drop in some of this pink. Again, I can just, it will spread a little bit because it's a bit damp, and that's fine. I don't want it to feel like it's I'm just kind of blending it in a bit. So it is a bit more diffuse. It's not. You can soften it down as well, just by a bit of tissue or something. Just want to blend it down on the edges. All sorts of things you can do. And then over this side, you know, if you want something a bit darker, there's a bit more. You can put a little bit of slightly darker. Um, Slightly darker kind of colour over this side. Yeah, I'm just going to popping it in first of all, this colour. Now it does look a little bit blocky at the moment. So again, I'm just going to damp tissue and just really soften through. Just soften through that edge, that end there. It's taking a tiny bit of it out, just kind of diffusing it a little bit with the screen. Oh, it feels quite nice, that. There we go. There we go. And that's it. That's all no one really do for that. You could make it darker if you wanted, but I'm quite happy just with that there. You could go much darker with that on, but I'm quite happy. Yeah. I'm going to look at this side as well. So I'm going to take out this. I think this will probably be very well, just lift a little bit. Now I am just going. What I am going to do though, I'm just going to take around here. Bring in some of this colour into these little gaps here. There we go. There we go. So just diffuse that a little bit. So yeah, so that's if you're adding a background. But as I said, you know who's under any pressure to actually add backgrounds all the time, and some of these things you need to really think through. You don't always have like an immediate thought about it. Sometimes you want to come away from it and think about that. So I hope that's been really helpful, and I hope you have an absolute lovely time doing it because it's just so absorbing. It's really wonderful for us getting into that really chilled, relaxing vibe. It's lovely. And really looking, really important, isn't it, for us to look. Right, thank you.